All right, so we have been through a lot of stuff with buffer, with polybuffer, with learning how to use combine in interesting ways. So let's take a look at something that we can do with buffer that might not be readily apparent, and that is we're going to make a wavetable oscillator that will play back whatever is stored in the buffer. So here I've got the basic start of a synth patch. I've got a node in, it goes to an ADSR, and then that goes to a multiplier. So in order to use this, what I need to do first is I need to create a buffer. So I'm just going to create a buffer, ER, not IR, and I'm just going to call it my wave. So that can be read and we can dump files into there pretty easily. Then I'm going to use a wavetable oscillator, which is called, appropriately, wave. And wave takes a argument, which is the name of the buffer. You can also give it start point, you can give it endpoints, you can give it channels, but we're only going to be working with the most basic application of that right now, which is the buffer. I'm going to connect that up here, but before I can do anything, I need to drive wave with a phasor. So the way that this works is that I'm taking MIDI in, I'm sending that as frequency into phasor, and then phasor is going to go through the wavetable that I have in buffer. And right now, if I lock the patch and double click on there, I got nothing. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to bring up my Finder window. I've got some wave files here. These are from the Adventure Kid waveform pack. And what I can do is I can just hit new message, read, make sure the .wave is there, and then I need to save this, and I need to save it in the exact same folder, otherwise it's not going to work. So always remember where your save locations are. And specifically, max patches and number 6, and that looks good. We'll save it there. All right, so that's in there. Now I can drop that like so, click it, and that loads up this sample into the buffer called my wave. At this point, I can play it. And let's add an ATT-RUI and not a new object. So what this is doing is it's using phasor to go step by step and play every sample that is stored in buffer. The reason why I chose the Adventure Kid pack is because it's really easy to know how many samples there are. So I'm always going to have the same number of samples, and in fact, they're always going to be 600 samples long. So thank you, Adventure Kid, for doing that. But there's no way to change which sample I'm using without manually copying and pasting all of this information for the file name and then sending that to buffer, which is a little annoying. Or is it? Remember, we talked about combine last time, and combine is a really, really useful object. So what I can do is I'm going to create combine. I'm going to give it a lot of this data. So I'm just going to paste that in. AKWF underscore cheese with a Z underscore 001 or 0001. But then I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to type I space dot wave, and then I'm going to give it the attribute of triggers 1. And that way, whatever I put into this second inlet will trigger it and send it out. So let's insert an int. And we're going to insert a message box right there. And let's see what we get. Okay. So AKWF underscore cheese 0001, 2, 3, 4, 5, And there are 6 of those total that I saved in that directory beforehand. So cool, that works. No errors. But there is one thing, which is that buffer requires a read message. I can't just give it a file name. So in order to do that, what I need to do instead is I need to insert an object called prepend and give it the argument of read. Now, watch what happens. I'll move this over. As I cycle through the numbers, it creates a full message of read AKWF cheese, whatever the number .wave. And we can send this now directly to buffer. And I'm going to pull up buffer. I'm going to bring it over here so we can see it while I cycle through these. And we should be able to see, in fact, that buffer is changing its values. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see that the slope changes and gets different as I do that. And in fact, we can test that by hitting play and seeing what happens. There's number 1. So that is just playing back a very simple single cycle waveform. If you want to get into more involved applications of that, which unfortunately we're probably not going to have time to do in class, there is a second object that you should look at called 2D wave. And you can create very, very complex harmonic tones. But for now, this is just a really great way to create some really cool sounds. If you're looking for a specific type of synth similar to Serum or Wavetable in Ableton Live, and you just want to get some other oscillator types that are not just sine, triangle, pulse width modulation, or saw. You can find a lot of those online. I recommend searching for the Adventure Kid Waveform Pack or the Void Vertex Single Cycle Waveforms. Both of those play extremely nice with the wave object in Max MSP.